if you are fed up with Tachyon meta number 2 and want to play a brain-dead deck that pretty much cooks this whole meta, and also are willing to spend a tiny bit of money on structure decks, this is probably the best deck I can come up with that you could be playing right now. It is not the first time I've made a video on Ancient Gears, and I have had people tell me that Ancient Gears is not an easy deck to play, but if you build the deck that I do it right here, it is the easiest thing ever to play. And the reason why I call this deck Tachyon Ancient Gear is because you can see we have a singular Tachyon trap in our deck, but don't let that one trap fool you. Our entire game plan going first is to make Tachyon Dragon, so essentially you are just playing Tachyon when you go first with a weaker endboard, and playing Ancient Gear when you are going second. We'll get to the details of the deck later, but basically the whole reason why this deck is so good against every single meta deck and also such an idiot-proof deck is exactly 3 copies of this card. Ancient Gear Fortress, which checks the whole meta. It forces out Dragoon, it forces out Transmigration, and it turns off every single trap hole, and even if your opponent negates it with their Omni Negates, you have 3 copies, so you can just activate a second one. And so the game plan of this entire deck is when it goes first, it ends on a singular defense position Tachyon Dragon, and also has a searchable Tachyon Spiral Galaxy that you'll be adding to your hand throughout the combo, and then you will be activating the trap card to make your Tachyon Dragon unaffected by anything, and also make it unable to be destroyed by battle. So that pretty much guarantees that you don't lose in your opponent's turn. And then when your turn comes around again, you can just completely destroy your opponent, because Ancient Gear is such a ridiculously strong going second deck, even without any staples like a Droplet or Eclipse, because of the existence of Ancient Gear Fortress. And you will also be able to pretty much guarantee follow-up and multiple copies of Fortress when you go first as part of your combo. So we'll go over the deck real quick. It's pretty standard. Most of the cards in here are pretty standard. We have some different ratios for some cards that you don't often see in other lists, and I'll talk about them. We have 2 copies of Ancient Gear Dark Golem. You must play at least 2. You can play 3 copies if you really want to, but 2 is at minimum, because you will be summoning both copies on your first turn because you need 2 level 8s. It searches anything. It searches Fortress when you go first for follow-up, and it searches Fusion when you go second. 1 copy of Ancient Gear Golem, because we need a target for Ancient Gear Commander, which sends a Golem from the deck to let you normal summon a monster from your hand. 1 copy of Ancient Gear Wyvern, which you get from the skill usually, and searches anything that you need, usually a copy of Fortress when you go second. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Statue, which is another starter alongside with Commander. This card can tribute itself to summon any Ancient Gear from the deck, and can special summon itself when your opponent controls more monsters than you do. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Tanker. It revives a monster if your opponent has a monster, and summons from hand if they don't. And also gets to pop your face-up cards to trigger the effects of your Ancient Gear Fortress or your Gear Town. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Advance. Most people don't play 3 copies, but if you really want this deck to be the brain-dead deck that it is, you need to play 3 copies, because you need it to search Fortress. And also it is a starter on its own, and when this card is activated, you add an Ancient Gear spell trap from your deck to your hand, and you'll be adding a copy of Ancient Gear Catapult, which requires you to have no monsters on your field, but the Ancient Gear Advance's second effect allows you to tribute a monster to draw a card, which means you can clear your field to activate Catapult. Catapult says you can target a face-up card you control to destroy it, and then special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck. And the card you'll be destroying usually is a copy of Gear Town, which when destroyed can summon another Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So by using Catapult to destroy your Gear Town, you summon 2 level 8s from your deck, and you can make it rank 8, as simple as that. We're only playing 1 copy of Fusion. Decks back in the day must play 2 copies, because you make a Howitzer when you go first, and then you need a second copy on your follow-up. but because when we go first we don't make a fusion, we only make rank 8s, so we don't need 2 copies. This card lets you use deck monsters as fusion material if you have an Ancient Gear Golem on your field as part of the material. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress, and this is where your money will come in. You can play this deck with only 1 Fortress, but you definitely want as many copies of it as possible if you want to cut down on non-engine. And also it is really good in a meta like right now where decks have Omni Negates. This card says during the turn your monsters are no more special summoned, they cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Really broken effect. And not only that, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of Ancient Gear cards and effects. So once the Fortress hits the field, any number of Omni-Negates cannot negate your other spells. Like, they cannot save the Dragoon Negate for Fusion, for example, because they must negate the Fortress. And if your opponent destroys it, or if you destroy it yourself, you also get to trigger its Graveyard effect to revive a Ancient Gear monster from your graveyard, or you can summon from your hand if you want, but you are locked into Ancient Gear monsters for the rest of your turn, which will come up, so keep this in mind. 1 copy of Ancient Gear Duel, which kinda completes the weakness of Ancient Gear Fortress. It complements it really well, because cards like Mirror Jade does not target, and also do not destroy a monster, it just non-target banishes. But Ancient Gear Duel says that Ancient Gear Golem monsters cannot be affected by your opponent's activated monster effects. So Mirror Jade will not be able to do a single thing while the Duel is on the field. And also the skill just sets this for you face up for free, so you don't even have to worry about this card being negated. And even though the second effect can be negated, once you have Fortress on the field, they can't even respond to your effect. And the second effect basically allows you to fusion summon using 1 Ancient Gear Golem on your field plus any amount of Ancient Gear monsters in your graveyard, and banish them to make Ancient Gear Fusion that can attack 3 times. Really strong effect. And finally, 1 copy of Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, which is the card that we're going to search going first, and makes our guy unaffected and unable to be destroyed by battle, so that we guarantee that we don't lose. Extra deck, we play 1 copy of Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. It just attacks 3 times because you make it with a trap, and it has Piercing, and so does Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. This can attack every single monster your opponent controls, and is unaffected by spell trap effects and locks your opponent from activating monster effects during the battle phase. For the Xyz monsters, we're playing 1 copy of Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon. Even though the trap works with any dragon type Galaxy monster, you must end on Tachyon Dragon specifically, because the Ancient Gear card effects lock you from setting cards. It says you cannot set cards for the rest of your turn, so you must end on Tachyon Dragon and then activate the trap from your hand. We have 1 copy of Full Armor Photon Dragon and 1 copy of Cypher Blade. This is what you use your Tachyon Dragon for after your opponent passes turn, because when you make an unaffected Tachyon Dragon, it will stay on your field until your next turn, and then you can immediately threaten interruptions by making a copy of Full Armor Photon and Cypher Blade. Dragluxion is what adds you the trap to your hand. And for the Link monsters, 2 copies of Ballista. We don't play Gear Gigant X because we are not playing Tightroid or the Train that blocks attacks, but we do use a Ballista when we go first to search Gear Town, so you do need 2 copies, 1 for going first and 1 for follow-up. And then finally 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to just threaten back row, and also get rid of silly floodgates like non-fusion area. The skill is pretty simple, all things considered. It locks you into the Earth Machines except from the extra deck. Also adds you any Ancient Gear monster from the deck to your hand by revealing. And also, if your opponent activates any effect during your turn, you get to just place the trap card to your field, and then you can normal summon 2 times this turn. With that said, let's have a look at some replays so I can actually show you what this deck's game plan is, going first and going second. Okay, in our first replay, we are in low-level KC Cup Stage 1, and we are going first. So this shows what the combo is going first. We have a lot of starters, and Ancient Gear Tanker is one of them. We can reveal it to add exactly Wyvern to our hand, and then we normal summon either Commander or Tanker, and that allows us to summon the Ancient Gear Wyvern either by special summoning or normal summoning it. We add a copy of Ancient Gear Advance, but because we already have it, we will be adding a Catapult. We'll Ballista to add Gear Town specifically, activate Gear Town, activate Advance, this is where you add Ballista, but add Catapult, because we already have Catapult, we add a Fortress instead. And then we tribute to draw a card, Statue is a pretty good one. We'll then destroy the field spell using the Catapult, and then going Chailing 1 Dark Golem, Chailing to Gear Town, summoning another level 8. And then we'll be adding more fortresses to our hand, so these fortresses are all for follow-up. And then we'll go Dragluxion, add the trap, make Tachyon Dragon in defense, and remember to not put it in the EMZ because otherwise you lock yourself from making Ancient Gear Ballista. And then during the draw phase, we'll activate the trap. So ideally, you actually want to activate the trap when your opponent tries to get rid of it, because otherwise if they have something like a Book of Eclipse, they can just chain it. But because I am not paying attention and I'm multitasking and I am brain dead, so we'll be using it in the draw phase, and that still usually works. Opponent will pass with Dragoon, I don't really care about that too much. We'll immediately threaten some back row by making the rank 8 package from our deck, and then threaten the second one with Phoenix. So this is kind of a misplay, because if they negate with Dragoon, we literally cannot out the non-fusion area and the Dragoon. But because they didn't negate with Dragoon, we can still play. Now, pretty much they cannot interrupt any of our plays while we have the Fortress on our field. I don't know why they decide to not negate the Fortress, maybe they didn't read. But with the Fortress on our field, we can do pretty much anything we want, and even if they do, we have more Fortresses in our hand to just activate. So it's not like it would have made a difference. We can just make a fusion and then just punch over our opponent's Dragoon. And even if they boost their attack, we can still punch over it because our monsters are insanely big. Okay, game 2, this is actually my rank up match for King of Games. I don't know why it didn't show the win and you rank up notification on the side there, but trust me, it is the rank up match for Legend 5. So we're going second. This basically shows what this deck does going second against a meta deck like Tachyon. Their end board is really scary for most decks that don't play specific outs to it. They need to draw something like an Eclipse or like a Lava Golem, but our deck can just play around it. Our deck is so strong that we don't need to play any non-engine and we can just push through it, and we can win like 99% of the time if they don't draw some sort of silly floodgate like a non-fusion area alongside their usual end board. So we're gonna end on their usual end board of 1 Tachyon and 1 Harbinger. We'll activate Fortress. They have to negate this, otherwise they can't negate anything else. We'll activate a copy of Advance to grab a second Fortress, and then we'll activate the Fortress again. Our opponent will have to Transmigration it because otherwise they can't negate anything again. And then now we can pretty much play the game uninterrupted. We will be able to set a trap from our deck to play around any hand traps that he might have. So if he has like a Veiler still lurking in his hand, that won't work either because we have the Jewel on our field. We'll go Tanker. He does have a Veiler, but Tanker, even though it is not an Ancient Gear Golem, it does mention it, so it is protected. And so we can still use this effect anyway. We'll activate a copy of Fusion, and then that's lethal on board, but we can extend a bit further. We can make a copy of Ballista to add a Gear Town, and then we can activate the Gear Town, and then pop the Gear Town to make our opponent's monster attack 0 so that we can punch full game. But even if we don't make them 0, it's still lethal anyway, but that's what you will want to do if your monsters aren't big enough to go for lethal. So yeah, this is my rank up match. I am currently in King of Games. I've been playing this deck, and yeah, the deck's pretty good, and tell me what you think. Thanks for watching, goodbye.